On this episode of The Road Chose Me, I'm exploring Kenya, meeting friendly locals, having misadventures, and getting remote. I drive from Uganda into Kenya at a really tiny border. In fact, that's the bridge across the river separating the two countries, and here I am waiting at immigration to get my passport stamped. I camp a night on the shores of Lake Victoria and then head straight to Massai Mara National Park, and I am not disappointed in the least. From the minute I drive in, I start seeing wildlife, and then more, and then more. This is easily the most wildlife I've ever seen in any national park across Africa. And while giraffes are cool, that's not all I see. I've only been in the park 20 minutes when I spot this enormous leopard hanging out by a river. I sit and watch for over half an hour as she prowls up and down the riverbank. Not 10 minutes later, I spot a family of 4 or 5 male cheetahs out hunting. They walk so close to the Jeep, I'm afraid to put the window down. This is the first time I've ever seen cheetahs in the wild. Not only is the wildlife spectacular, but out here the wide open plains of the Massai Mara have a beauty of their own. There's only the occasional tree, which makes for an amazing photo, and the clouds streaking across the sky look otherworldly. Everywhere I go, I bump into zebra and wildebeest, as well as tons of other animals. I still haven't fixed that front drive shaft, so I'm driving around everywhere in rear-wheel drive only. I'm conscious of where I go, and a few of the river crossings have me thinking, but it's never a problem. When I said there's a lot of wildlife, I really meant it. I actually see so many lions on this day that I stopped taking photos of them. I think it was well over 20 when I realised I don't need any more lion photos. That's the first time that's ever happened. I also see this lioness hunting a herd of wildebeest. She never does quite catch up to them. I continue moving through the park and I get to the super famous river crossing where thousands and thousands of wildebeest and zebra cross the river every year. This is the one you've seen in all the documentaries where they get chomped by crocodiles. I'm here in Massai Mara National Park in Kenya, and I'm just watching all these wildebeest group up. The Mara River is just here on our left. And so all these wildebeest are just slowly kind of filing in. They make this single file, you can see them there. And they're just slowly trotting over towards the river. And I got a Maasai guide with me and he tells me that I just kind of keep grouping up like that all afternoon. And if we're lucky, one of them's going to decide that today is the right day to cross. And this is right on the tail end of the migration, so there's probably only a couple of thousand here. He said on a big day there'll be tens of thousands doing this and then eventually cross. So yeah, fingers crossed they keep doing this kind of single file thing, and we might see some action here in a minute. There's a bunch of crocs down in the river, so it could get exciting. Of course, there are plenty of elephants around and lots of other animals too to keep me interested. This national park has been absolutely stunning. In a single day here, I've seen as much as I've seen in the rest of Africa put together. Make sure Maasai Mara is on your must-visit list. Leaving the park, I'm not quite ready to head into the capital of Nairobi yet, so I take what looks like a shortcut on the map, which is a pretty decent gravel road. So, it's raining. I'm just driving up this slight incline, and because I don't have my front drive shaft, no four-wheel drive, she's pretty slippery, slid sideways into this ditch. And so I've got the winch out for the second time in a couple of weeks, and it's going over to this telephone pole over here. It's too sideways, I don't like it, but I don't have enough winch line to get to the next telephone pole. So unfortunately it's raining. I'm not going to set the camera on a tripod, so I won't be able to show you what happens. But fingers crossed something good happens. So I got it out of the ditch, no problem.
Yeah, the winch kind of pulled it sideways because of the sideways pull, and so it ended up kind of across the road, and then I was blocking the road for the next four-wheel drives that came along. So the guys got out and kind of helped push the back end around, and then I just reversed slowly down. This is the slope, it's not very steep, it's just slick. So now I'm going to try and go up on the left here where that car's stopped, that white car there, and see if going up there is any different. They say it's not as slick, but I guess I'm going to find out. So yeah, once again, winch is worth having.
Further along, the water has really accumulated on the road, and I start to really think it's time to fix this front drive shaft. I want four-wheel drive again. I don't get stuck anywhere, but walking through this stuff doesn't appeal to me, so I do go in carrying more speed than is ideal, and certainly flick up a lot of mud with my wheel spin. I drive right into the heart of Nairobi, the big city, and I set about getting some jobs done. I have to get some visas for upcoming countries, and I have to do some work on the Jeep. I wouldn't want it all to be work though, so in the meantime, I head off to the nearby Nairobi Giraffe Centre. This is where they have a couple of giraffes that you can feed little pellets. As a kid, giraffes were actually my favourite animal of all time, and so it's quite surreal to be so close. The head looks a lot like a horse or maybe a moose, but it's at least twice as big. It's really hard to believe how big its head can be. Normally it's so far away on the end of its neck, but these ones are pretty used to people and they have no problem coming right down, which gives me an idea. Yep, that's about as slobbery as you might expect. Alright, time for some work. I get some parts in, and I replace the joint on the end of the front drive shaft, so I finally have four-wheel drive again. As well as that, I do a bunch of oil changes, tyre rotation, and even put new brake pads on the rear again. I think now I'm ready to tackle the rest of Africa. After all that hard work, I need another break, so I head over to the nearby elephant orphanage, where a whole bunch of elephants have been rescued for various reasons. Every day they get fed, and so you can go along and watch and pet the little guys. They are so funny to watch and so friendly. I could easily go back here day after day. You can see they don't mess around when drinking their daily milk. All of them were so eager to get this, it was first on the agenda. But then after that, there was plenty of time to play with them as they walked around and just interacted with us as they pleased. This one couldn't get enough of his little soccer ball, and of course I couldn't resist the temptation to play soccer with an elephant. Then he took a liking to my foot, and then came over for a rub. Just like you'd guess, his skin is really rough, a little bit like coarse sandpaper, and you can tell he's extremely strong. Even when he just leans against me a little bit, he nearly pushes me away. Even the warthogs here are really used to people. If you're ever in Nairobi, make sure you stop at the elephant orphanage. The main road from Kenya into Ethiopia hasn't been the safest place lately. I've bumped into a few people who were caught in full-on gunfire and even saw dead bodies on the side of the road. This doesn't sound like a place that I want to be, and on top of that, it's just a paved highway anyway, so it doesn't sound very exciting. Further to the west is a magical lake called Lake Turkana, and it is technically possible to drive from Kenya into Ethiopia following the shores of the lake. It's extraordinarily remote, and there's no immigration or customs of any kind. So before leaving Nairobi, I stock up on supplies and I get myself and the Jeep legally stamped out of the country, actually a week before I'll leave the country. So I strike out north, aiming to get to the shores of Lake Turkana and eventually Ethiopia. Here I am, northern Kenya, just driving towards Lake Turkana. So there's the road just there, and it's midday, so it's time for lunch. So what I usually do, I'm just off the road, you can see here, 20 feet, and I like to find some shade. It's always nice to be able to hang around in the shade. The sun's pretty intense, and this is my pretty standard lunch these days. Avocado on bread, some salt, some pepper, and yeah, I normally hang out like this for half an hour. It's nice to be out of the driver's seat, have a leg stretch, and you know, cars and motorbikes go past and stuff, and I just wave and give a thumbs up, and people seem happy enough to have me here. And well, on the horizon there you can see clouds and a bit of rain, and then near me here I've got these big mountains, which are pretty awesome. So yeah, these are kind of my regular lunch stops, always beautiful places. I've been told this Lake Turkana route is possibly the most remote and the most beautiful in all of East Africa. Oh, I'm looking forward to this.